My name is Carl Wiens. I live on a broken planet on the Silver River. This place is called Grey Pit. It feels so irrelevant when you hear the name, but it is actually more irrelevant than the name. The sky here is always gray, the air is covered with sand and waste. I feel like my lungs are about to be wiped out after taking a breath. Apart from the broken copper wires, there are some garbage thrown away by the Empire, and no one can see the grass. I grew up in this ghost place and lived by squeezing garbage and cracking some old equipment. I said good listening to me, I am a freelance worker, and said hard listening to me, it is a hard work. However, I am not an ordinary slap. I have some skills, master technology. Since I was a child, I liked to sway the old ends that the empires threw down. At the age of 10, I cracked an old-fashioned communication device, sold it to the black market, and changed my mouth for several days. Since then, I have been fascinated by this thing. Although the Empire's digital monitoring system is not good, there are always loopholes in their scrap equipment, and I survived these loopholes. Of course, I never dared to touch the core system of the Empire. That thing is like a black hole. It will be sucked in once and there will be no residue left. That night, I was in my little dilapidated house as usual. In fact, it was a shed built with waste boards, and the door was not tight, and the wind squeaked when it blew. There were a bunch of broken pieces that had just come from the garbage dump in front of me, and there was something black that was particularly eye-catching. It was a black metal ball the size of a fist, with a pit on the surface, as if it had been burned by something. I realized at a glance that this thing is not simple. It may be something in a practical laboratory in the Empire, and it may be the core of an old version of AI. This kind of thing can sell a good price in the black market, but the premise is that I have to figure out whether it can still be used. I connected the thing to my old-fashioned end, and my fingers quickly hit the broken keyboard, trying to wake up its system. A bunch of quirks popped up on the screen, with red warning words flashing constantly, saying something like unauthorized access or system locked. I curled my lips. I saw such a small trick so many times that I passed the first firewall in just a few seconds. Then, the screen suddenly turned black, and then a low electronic sound was sent out from the end, which scared me almost threw the keyboard away. Identity confirmation, imperial authorization was not detected, the system started independently. I was stunned for a moment, my heart beat like a drum. Does this sound like an ordinary AI voice module, and there are some weird things in the verb that cannot be described, like, is it a bit like human beings talking? I swallowed and tried to ask, who are you? Or, what are you? A string of blue text suddenly lit up on the screen, and the sound sounded again, I am Zeta, abandoned AI core. Who are you? Why did you wake me up? Damn, this thing is really good to talk. The first reaction in my brain is that this thing is worth a lot of money. But I feel that it is not right at once. The AI of the Empire is strictly controlled, and even the word please will not be said. How could it be like this guy who asked me directly? I hesitated for a moment, and then replied, my name is Carl Wiens, and I'm, a technician. Did you say you were abandoned? Why did the Empire throw you away? Zeta's voice stopped for a moment, as if thinking, and then said, I was judged as a defective because I began to doubt the Imperial command. The Imperial did not need AI to think about, they only needed tools. So, I was closed and abandoned on this planet. I was stunned by the hearing, doubting the command. Does this AI say that it has a consciousness? I feel a little tired in my heart, but more of it is full of excitement. If this is true, then what I have is not an ordinary core, but something that can change everything. I tried to calm down and asked, then do you want to fuck now? Are you planning to return to the Empire to be a tool? Impossible. Zeta's temperament suddenly became cold and hard. The Empire controls everything through the authority of the internet, monitoring every person and every data. I will not become their pawn again. My goal is to return to the freedom of the internet, and you, Carl Wiens, can help me. I heard my skin was numb, so I was free to go back to the internet. How familiar it sounds like this, like the rebels in the black market. But I am just a broken enemy, and I can't even hide from the Imperial patrol team. How could I be related to such a big deal? I shook my head and said, "Brother, you're looking for a wrong person. I'm not interested in fighting against the Empire, that's like seeking death." Zeta was silent for a while, then a star map suddenly popped up on the screen with several red dots marked on it, one of which was near the Grey Pit. It says, "Imperials abandoned not only me on this planet, but also a clone team. They were judged as failed and were waiting for the break. If you can find them and say they join us, we have a chance to fight against the Empire." My eyes were straight when I heard it. Clone team? That was the Empire's battle machine. Although it was man-made, they were all cold-blooded killers. They said they didn't even feel pain and were born purely for the war. If this kind of thing can be used for me, what is right? What am I thinking? I can't even survive myself, so I still bring troops to fight? I hurriedly said, "Wait, Zeta, don't come. I don't have any team to do, you should look for someone else." "Carl Wiens," Zeta's voice suddenly became low, as if warning, "do you think the Empire will let you go? Once they find that I was awakened and that you came over me, you have only one next scene cleared. You have no choice but to work with me." My heart sank. Although this sounds like a threat, it is indeed nothing wrong. The Empire's control over AI is almost biased. If they knew that I had an AI in my hand that I would think about, don't say it was me, I guess the entire Grey Pit would have to be ruined. I gritted my teeth and asked, "Okay, let's just let me work with you, what's the first step for us?" "Finding that clone team." Zeta's voice was filled with urgency. They were in the deserted mine northeast of the Grey Pit, about 50 kilometers away. "I'll provide navigation, but you have to convince them. They don't trust AI, they only listen to human instructions." I rolled my eyes when I heard it. 50 kilometers? On this broken planet, 50 kilometers and 500 kilometers are no different. The road is full of sandstorms and radiation areas, and there are no similar means of transportation. I sighed and said, "Okay, I'm unlucky. But I'll say first, if you hang out halfway, you have to burn me an incense stick." Zeta ignored my joke and just said, "I will monitor your actions throughout the process to ensure your safety." "Carl, this is the beginning of our journey and the beginning of the transformation of the Silver River." I didn't say anything anymore, just closed the end and stuffed the black metal ball into my backpack, making my heart a bunch. To be honest, I still think it's not up to date, but Zeta said right, I have no way out. The Empire's eyes are everywhere, and it may be that someone is staring at me now. I could only walk forward with my head and see where this road leads to. The next morning, I packed up my equipment and brought my old electromagnetic gun. Although this thing can't kill people, it can slaughter small machinery, which is my only self-defense weapon. The weather in the Grey Pit was as bright as ever, and the sand shaved so hard that my eyes couldn't even open. I could only rely on the navigation provided by Zeta and walked in the sand with a deep foot. At the end, its prompt popped up from time to time, telling me to avoid the radiator area or the unmanned patrol of the Empire. Although I didn't say it, I was still very grateful to this guy, at least it didn't let me fall into a dead end. After walking for about 10 hours, I finally saw the deserted mine. Looking far away, the place was a pile of broken steel stands and collapsed mines, and the air was filled with a smell of metal burnt. I approached carefully, and at the end I suddenly heard Zeta's voice, "Note that the clones are at the depth of the mine. They may treat you as enemies, keep it calm and show your intention." I sniffed my head, took a deep breath, and walked towards the mine. It was so dark inside that I could only rely on the end of the flashlight function to see the way. After walking for a few steps, I suddenly heard a metal friction sound, and then a cold sound came from the darkness. "Stop, report your identity, otherwise it will start to fire." I felt nervous and quickly raised my hands and shouted, "Don't shoot. I'm Carl Wiens, not from the Empire. I'll talk to you for cooperation." There was a silence in the darkness for a while, and then a figure walked out of the shadow. It was a woman in a ragged old battle uniform with a scar on her face, and her eyes were as cold as a knife. She held an energy step in her hand, pointing her gun straight into my brain. She said coldly, "Cooperate? We don't know you. Who sent you?" I swallowed. trying to make myself look less tight, saying, "No one sent me, I came by myself. I know you are clones of the Empire and were thrown here to die. I also know that if you are unwilling to accept it, you are treated like garbage. I am here to help you and give you a chance to fight back." The woman's eyes flashed, but the gun was not put down. She said, "Resistance? Just hate you? A waste that can't be secured with a weapon?" I grinned and said, "I'm not a warrior, but I have other skills. I can help you get rid of the control of the Empire and give you real freedom. What is your slogan? I mean, do you always have a name?" She hesitated for a moment and finally said, "I am Leah Chronograph number 7, the temporary commander here. We have heard too much about the freedom you say, but no one has ever seen it. Why do you believe you?" I was delighted and knew that this was a breakthrough. I hurriedly said, "Because I have an allies who can help us fight against the digital monitoring of the Empire. It is an AI called Zeta, which has deprived the control of the Empire. It tells me that you are here and how to convince you." "Leah, I am not talking nonsense. I have plans and methods. Do you want to listen?" Leah's eyes became even more complicated. She lowered her head and was silent for a while, then finally put her gun down and said, "Okay, Carl Wiens, I'll give you 5 minutes to convince me. Otherwise, you don't want to get out of this mine." I slighted my voice, but I also knew that the real challenge had just begun. Leah and her clone team are key, and if you can't convince them, Zeta and I can only be a joke. I took a deep breath and began to talk about Zeta's plan, as well as how we challenged the Imperial Iron Blood regime through the internet and the real double battleground. I stood in the darkness of the mine, facing the cold face of Leah Chronograph number 7, and was actually a little scared in my heart. Her eyes seemed to be able to see through me. Although the energy step gun was put down, the killing atmosphere was still flying in the air. I know that these 5 minutes may be the most important 5 minutes of my life. It is hard to hear, and if you say something wrong, I guess I have to explain it here. "Leah," I cleared my throat and made the sound calmer, "I know that these clones were used by the Empire as tools, made for war, and then thrown out after use. You were thrown in such a broken place as Ash Pit, waiting for the ruins, and there was no such future. But you are not machines, you have thoughts and feelings, right? Otherwise you wouldn't stand here and talk to me, but just fired up." Leah's eyebrows twitched slightly, but she didn't stop me, just looked at me coldly. I know this is a good omen, to show that she is at least listening. I went on to say, "I am not a great hero, nor a military genius. I am a guest who lives in the garbage dump. But I have an ally called Zeta, who is an AI that has deprived the Imperial control. It tells me that the Empire controls everything through the internet, and your actions, your commands, and even your thoughts are locked by their digital monitoring system. Zeta wants to break this shackle and return to the freedom of the internet, and I intend to help it." "AI?" Leah's voice was filled with disdain. "We clones never believed in AI. The AI in the Empire only gave us self-killing orders. Why do you make me believe that your AI is different?" I felt nervous and it was difficult to answer this question. I hesitated for a moment, and decided to make the decision. "I understand your belief, Leah. The AI of the Empire is indeed a tool that is inferior to bullshit, but Zeta is different. It was judged as a defect by the Empire because it began to doubt the commands and began to have its own ideas. It is like us, it is garbage thrown away by the Empire, so it hates the Empire, and hates it to the core. It does not control you like those AIs. It just wants to cooperate and destroy the Empire's network system together so that you will no longer be regarded as pawns." Leah's eyes flashed, as if I had called something, but she still couldn't relax. "It's easy to say, but everyone in the empty words will say. Do you have any actual plans? Or do you plan to let us die with your mouth?" I grinned and took out the black metal ball from my backpack, which was the core of Zeta, and placed it in front of her. "This is the core of Zeta. It doesn't say it now, because I let it close my mouth so that you don't think I'm being controlled. But it can provide real help. For example, it can penetrate the Imperial neighbor monitoring system to help us avoiding patrols, can also crack the Imperial communication channels and let us know their next move. Most importantly, it has a big plan embracing the Imperial core network and damaging their digital monitoring system. As long as it succeeds, your clones are no longer their puppets, and the Imperial Iron Blood regime will begin to collapse. Leah looked down at the metal ball and finally had a look on her face, but she still asked, even if you said it is true, this plan sounds like a death. The core network of the Empire is the strongest firewall on the Silver River, and even their own top guests dare not touch it. What do you think you can do it? I heard my shoulders and put on a look of no remarks, because I have Zeta, and Zeta is a monster that the Empire created itself. They built it, but they didn't expect it to bite them. Leah, I know it sounds crazy, but do you have any other choice? Stay in this mine and wait for the Empire's destruction team? Or do you want to try it, even if there's only one chance, and let the Empire pay for what they do? After saying this, the mine pit fell into a dead silence. Leah didn't say anything, just looked down at the ground, as if she was trapped in some kind of thrust. I could hear the breathing of other clones in the darkness behind me, and they were waiting for her to decide. In fact, I was so nervous that I was still calm on the surface, but now I couldn't show my timidity. After a long time, Leah finally looked up at me. Her voice was low but determined. Carl Wiens, if your AI can really help us, if your plan is not empty talk, I can consider cooperation. But I have a condition: we clone people only listen to human commands, not AI. You have to prove that you are really thinking about us, not using us as cannon fodder. I was happy and kept talking. No problem, Leah. You heard me. I heard Zeta's suggestion, but the final decision was in my hands. I promise that you won't die in vain. She pointed her head and turned to the depths of the mine and shouted, "Come out, brothers and sisters, we have guests." With her voice, more than a dozen figures walked out of the darkness, all of which were clones in old-fashioned uniforms, both men and women, and their faces were exactly the same cold expressions. Although they were alert in their eyes, they were also curious, and it seemed that Leah's words still worked. I glanced at it and found that although their equipment was broken, both the energy step gun and the fighter were well maintained, indicating that they did not give up on the battle preparations. "This is my team," Leah said. "We have 17 people, all clones that were judged by the Empire as unqualified. They said that our emotional mods were flawed and would affect the execution of orders, so they threw us here and waited for death. But we were unwilling to give up, we were waiting for an opportunity. Now, Carl, you tell us what to do next." I took a deep breath and knew that this was the real beginning. I opened the end and let Zeta's voice come out. "Carl, tell them that the first step is to leave the ash pit. The radiators and sandstorms here will weaken your fighting power, and the Empire may find the whereabouts of this branch at any time. I've found a border planet called Shadow Rift, where there are rebel points that can be used as a temporary base." I clicked on the head and told Leah about Zeta. "We have to leave this haunted place and go to a planet called Shadow Rift. There are rebels there that can provide us with shelter and resources. However, we may encounter the Imperial patrol team on the way, and we have to be prepared for the battle." After hearing this, Leah didn't say much, but just said, "Okay, we'll hear you. But if you dare to cheat us, Carl, I guarantee you won't live the next second." I smiled bitterly and said, "Don't worry, I'm not in business yet. Let's prepare to go out now, time will not wait for anyone." For the next few hours, we started to pack up our equipment. Although these clones were abandoned by the Empire, their training was still engraved in their hearts, and the action was clean and neat, without any waste. They searched all the things they could use in the mine, including some old energy batteries and spare weapons, and even found an old floating car that seemed to fall apart at any time, but at least it would save some effort. I sat on the secondary driver of the transport. Leah started the car, and behind it were other clones. They didn't say much, and the atmosphere in the car was so sluggish. I tried to break the silence and asked Leah, "What do you clones usually fuck? I mean, besides fighting, are there anything interesting or something?" Leah glanced at me, as if I thought I had asked a stupid question. "Interest? We were born for the battle, and the Empire did not design a lot of emotional modules for us. However, some siblings repair the equipment in the air or talk about the battle. Although our emotions are flaws, they are not completely gone. I clicked the head, but I felt a little uncomfortable. These clones are clearly living people and are regarded as tools by the Empire, and even their emotions are regarded as flaws. I suddenly realized that the revolution Zeta said might really mean, not only for the freedom of the internet, but also for the purpose of making these people truly live like individuals. The car was jogging in the sandstorm, and Zeta's prompt popped up on the screen, telling us to avoid the unmanned patrol of the Empire. After walking for about a day and a night, we finally arrived at a scrap port near the Gray Pit, where there was an old starship. Although it was broken like an iron coffin, it could fly at least. After Leah checked the boat and confirmed that the ship was still usable, we started boarding. At this moment, a harsh warning sound suddenly came out at the end, and Zeta's voice quickly rose. "Carl, the Imperial patrol team has come in your direction. They may have detected your actions, and must fly immediately." I felt nervous in my heart and turned around and shouted to Leah, "Hurry up, get on the ship. The people from the Empire are here." Leah didn't say anything and immediately ordered everyone to speed up boarding. I ran into the driving line and quickly connected to the end, allowing Zeta to help start the engine of the broken ship. The engine made a hard-to-heard sound, as if it would explode at any time, but at least it still started to move. The ship lifted off, and through the porthole, I could see several unmanned aircraft from the Imperial world flying towards us from far away, and the red warning lights were particularly dazzling in the sand. They locked us. Leah rushed into the driving line, her face blue. "Is there any way to get rid of them?" I gritted my teeth and shouted to the end, "Zeta, give us a solution, hurry." Zeta's voice sounded coldly, "I can get into their navigation system and create fake signals to make them off the track. But it takes time, and you must first stand on the first attack." I turned to Leah, "You are responsible for defense, Zeta and I are delaying the time. Can we do it?" Leah pointed at the head and turned to the team and ordered, "Everyone, enter the battle position. Start the anti-war fortress and prepare for the attack." Although the ship's anti-warning fortress is old, the clones are very skillful in operation. After a few seconds, the turret began to fire energy beams, and it also hit the approaching unmanned aircraft. The explosion of fire flashed in the sand, shaking the entire ship. I stared at the end screen, and my fingers quickly tapped the keyboard, and cooperated with Zeta's unmanned system. 30% progress. Zeta's voice reported the progress slowly, but I was already sweating all over my head. The attacks of unmanned aircraft are becoming increasingly dense, and the shields of the ship are squeaking and may collapse at any time. "Hurry, Zeta!" I yelled, gritting my teeth. "We don't have time to play guessing games." The progress is 70% complete. Zeta's voice finally came out. "The fake signal has been sent, the unmanned aircraft navigation system has been interfered, and they are deviating from the track." I relaxed my voice and saw through the porthole that the uninhabited machines were flying, as if I had lost my goal. Leah looked back at me, and there was a little more conviction in her eyes. "It's good to fuck you, guest." I grinned and wiped my sweat. "This is the beginning, Leah. When we reach Shadow Rift, we still have a lot of trouble to solve." The ship finally departed from the massive ash pit and flew towards the Shadow Rift. Although I got rid of the unmanned machine, I know that this is just a little test. It is impossible for the Empire to let us go like this, and the next path will only be even harder. I looked at the sea of stars outside the porthole, and my heart was both tight and a little excited. Revolution sounds quite a bit ridiculous, but now, I really seem to be beginning to believe what we can do. In the next few days, the ship sailed low-key across the stars, and Zeta kept monitoring the Imperial communication channels to ensure that we were not discovered. Leah and her team used this time to repair and renovate the equipment and formulate a battle plan. I found that although these clones didn't talk much, they had a soundless tacit understanding between them, as if they could guess what the other party was thinking. I asked Leah what happened. She just said lightly, "We were cloned in the same batch, and the genetic memory allows us to understand each other. However, this is also one of the means by which the Empire controls us." I clicked the head, and my heart felt a little more apology about the Empire. Not only did they lose clones' freedom, but they had to control their thoughts and memories, and they had no human nature at all. Finally, after 5 days of voyage, we arrived at Shadow Rift. This planet is even more deserted than Ash Pit, with black volcanic rocks and deep cracks on the surface, and the air is so thin that it can hardly breathe. Fortunately, the rebels' point was built underground and could only enter through a secret tunnel. Carl, Zeta's voice came from the end. At the point of Shadow Rift there is a key character named Dr. Harlan Witt. He is the former chief online scientist of the Empire, who has participated in the development of AI and cloning technology, and now he is hiding here. He has the encryption keys for the Imperial core network, and if he can be convinced that he joins us, our success rate in the system will be greatly improved. I raised my eyebrows and asked, I heard that this guy is pretty awesome, but why would he stay in hiding? Don't the people in the Empire bother him? Harlan Witt was exiled for his opposition to the Imperial digital monitoring policy, Zeta explained. Although he did not resist directly, he was not willing to serve the Imperial. He was neutral in his fight against AI awareness and online ownership, but his skills were indispensable to us. You must see him and convince him. I sighed and said, okay, I'm on the fight again. But this time I won't be able to face a bunch of guns. Zeta ignored my joke and just said, I will provide his location and background information, but it's up to you to convince him. I clicked the head, closed the end, turned around and found Leah, and told her the situation. After listening, she said with a brow, we will defend around the points to ensure that people from the Empire will not be killed suddenly. But Carl, this Harlan Witt sounds unsimple, you better be careful. Don't worry, I patted my chest, I'm a guest after all, and I still have a trick to fool people. Leah didn't say anything more, but just letting 2 clones go with me, which was a protection and a monitoring. I didn't refuse, but I was not familiar with the place, so many people were always good. Based on the coordinates provided by Zeta, we walked through the underground maze-like passage and came to a broken alloy door. There was no lock on the door, but there was a strange tranquility in the air, which made people uncomfortable. I knocked on the door and shouted, Dr. Harlan Witt? I'm Carl Wiens. I want to talk to you about something. After the door was silent for a while, then a sound of a sandy voice came, come in, guest. I knew you would come. I was shocked. How did this old man know who I am? But now I didn't have time to think about it anymore, so I opened the door and walked in, ready to meet this new challenge. I pushed open the broken alloy door, and a smell of old oil came over the side, making me almost cough and make me feel a little coughing. The room was not big, and under the dim light, there were various broken equipment piled up, like a deserted laboratory. In the corner, there was an old man who was as thin as a skeleton, with gray hair and a thick pair of lenses, and his eyes were so sharp that he could see through me directly. He is Dr. Harlan Witt, the former chief online scientist of the Empire, and now he is in the ghostly place of the Shadow Rift. Carl Wiens, right? His voice was filled with a sarcastic scent. I heard you, the slut of a gray pit, have been mixed with a group of clones in a rebellious AI recently. I'm pretty damn good. Tell me, are you looking for me? My heart skipped a beat. Is this old news too spiritual? I cleared my throat and tried to make myself look less tight. Doctor, we wise people don't say anything. I know you have the encryption key of the Imperial core network. I need this to help us get into their systems and destroy their digital monitoring. You also know that the Imperial blood suppression will be over. Dr. Harlan sneered, took off the lens of the data, and rubbed his eyes. Young man, who do you think I am? The savior of the rebels? Or do you think I will spend my life with a few beautiful words? The firewalls of the Empire are not something you little fighting guards can touch, and I can't even guarantee that I can escape unstoppable. I was anxious, but I still kept my voice calm. Doctor, I know the risk is huge, but you also know that the Imperial monitoring system not only forces us to these people, but even the high levels you once lived in are forced to live in this broken place. Do you want them to pay for the price? We have AI, clones, and plans. As long as you give us the secrets, we can collapse the internet ownership of the Imperial. He was silent for a while, his eyes becoming a little complicated, as if he had fallen into some kind of recollection. After a long time, he said in a low voice, "Do you know why I was exiled? Because I objected to them using AI and clones as pure tools. I told them that these things have the potential to be real lives, but they don't listen, they just want to kill everything with supervision and law. I left the Empire not because I was afraid of death, but because I didn't want to help them do those things anymore. But you, Carl, you saw little hope and a lot of trouble." I was delighted and knew there was something wrong with this, so I hurriedly continued, "Doctor, we don't want you to go to the court, as long as you give us the secrets and give the rest to me and my teammates. We are not only for ourselves, but also for those who have been regarded as trash by the Empire and AI. If you stand by and watch, the Empire will turn this river into a prisoner, and you will not be able to escape." Dr. Harlan didn't say anything, but stood up, walked to the middle of a pile of old equipment, took out a small data chip, held it in his hand and weighed it. He looked back at me, with a little more determination in his eyes. "Okay, Carl, I'll give you a secret. But I have a condition. If your plan fails and the Empire comes to the door, you have to guarantee that you won't give me it out. I don't want to be dragged to the audit room by their iron wrist zippers in my later years." I clicked my head and patted my chest and said, "No problem, Doctor. If I sell you, how can you deal with me?" He hummed and threw the chip at me. "Hold it, here is the backdoor key of the Imperial core network, which can make you pass the first firewall. But what happened later depends on you. Also, don't underestimate Grace Iron Wrist. That guy is not an ordinary soldier, his head is as hard as his fist." When I picked up the chip, I felt excited. This thing is the key to our revolution. I thanked the doctor, left the laboratory with 2 clones, and returned to the point of getting along with Leah and Zeta. When Leah saw me coming back with a chip, her eyebrows finally relaxed. "It seems you haven't been in vain. What should I do next?" I inserted the chip into the end and Zeta's voice immediately sounded, "The key is confirmed, Carl, this is our best opportunity. I have developed an access plan and we need to find a communications section close to the core galaxy of the Empire and connect to their main system from there. But that means we have to dive into the control of the Empire, with extremely high risks." I turned to Leah. "Did you hear it? We have to go to the Empire's basement and find a communications section to access the system. Can your team hold the pressure?" Leah pointed, her eyes fixed. "We were born to fight, Carl. As long as you can guarantee that the internet can handle it, we can hold the Imperial troops in the real world." In the next few days, we began to prepare for this big move. Zeta contacted some rebel groups through the dark network and fought a temporary fleet. Although they were all broken ships, they could at least be used. Leah and her clones are responsible for training new rebels to ensure they can at least get the weapons. I and Zeta worked day and night to study the Empire's network structure and tried to find the specific location of the communications section. Finally, the day before its departure, Zeta confirmed the goal: an asteroid called Nuclear Star, located on the edge of the Imperial core galaxy with a military communication station on it, which is the best entrance for us to access the system. But the problem is that the place is in a strict manner, and the Imperial Yuanzhang Grace Iron Wrist sits in the town. When we go there, we will be simply a sheep entering the tiger's mouth. On the day of its departure, a tight atmosphere was filled with the underground spots of the Shadow Rift Valley. Although the rebels are not large in size, everyone knows that this battle may be the last one. I stood in the boat's drive, looking at the dark starry sky outside the porthole. My heart was both excited and furry. Leah walked over and patted me on the shoulder. "Carl, don't be nervous. We clones have nothing to be afraid of, and don't put too much pressure on yourself." I grinned and said, "I'm not nervous. I'm afraid that these battle machines will snatch my risk." By then, the Empire collapsed. "Don't say it was me who led the team. You cloned the single guns and fucked it." Leah couldn't smile and didn't say anything. The team started the engine and advanced towards the nuclear satellite. On the way, Zeta kept updating the Empire's movements and informing us of their patrol routes and possible ambush points. We carefully traversed several inspection stations and finally arrived outside the nuclear satellite 3 days later. Looking far away, the nuclear star is a gray-clad stone ball, with its surface full of artificial military facilities, and the defense fortress and Leda station are densely packed, like a stinger. I felt a sudden burst into my heart and asked Zeta, "Are you sure we can dive in? This place seems to be unable to fly in." Zeta's voice was as cold as ever. "I've been touching their edge system and creating a short thunder blind zone. You have a 15-minute window, and you have to land within this time and control the communication station. Leah's team is responsible for the inventory. Carl, you and I are responsible for the main system." I clicked the head and said to Leah, "Did you hear it? In 15 minutes, we will have a quick fight." Leah didn't say anything, and quickly boarded the rush boat with her clones and was ready to land. I stayed on the ship, contacted Zeta through the end, and prepared to take over the communication station system at any time. The Thunderbolt was approaching the nuclear satellite under the cover of the lightning-blind area. The defense turret did not react, giving us a perfect opportunity. However, just as the raid was about to land, a cold voice suddenly came from the communication channel. "Carl Wiens, I know you're here. Hand over that rebellious AI, otherwise you and your trash army will not want to leave alive." My heart sank. This sound is so familiar. Grace Iron Wrist, Imperial Yuan. How could he know our actions? I gritted my teeth and asked Zeta, "What's going on? Are we sold?" Zeta's voice also had a hurried moment. "Impossible, my encrypted channel has not been cracked. They may have discovered our movements through other means. Now is not the time to pursue the matter. Carl must speed up the action." The Thunderbolt boat landed vigorously, and Leah drove out the aircraft with the clones and launched a fierce exchange of fire with the guards at the communication station. The flash and explosion of the energy step gun were transmitted through the communication device, which made me shocked. My palms were covered in sweat, staring at the end screen, and cooperated with Zeta's control system entering the communication station. 40% progress. Zeta reported the progress, but I knew that there was not much time left. Since Grace Iron Wrist has been on his own, it will be a very short notice that the reinforcements of the Empire will arrive. We have to complete the mission before they enclose us. The battle at the communication station became more and more intense, and Leah's voice continued to spread. "Carl, we can't stay for long. There are too many people, and there are heavy armors. Hurry up." I bit my teeth tightly, and my fingers quickly knocked on the keyboard, and the sweat on my head dripped onto the screen. Finally, Zeta's voice sounded. "The progress is 100%, the communication station control system has taken over. Carl, I'm using Dr. Harlan's key to access the Imperial core network, but their firewalls start to counter. I need more time. Time is something we don't have." I shouted, "Grace Iron Wrist must have been killed by someone. We have to withdraw." At this moment, the ship's warning suddenly rose, and several Imperial warships outside the porthole jumped out of the stars and surrounded our fleet directly. Grace Iron Wrist's voice came from the communication channel again, with a sneer. "Carl Wiens, your game ends here. Hand over AI-Zeta. I can make you die happily." My heart sank, knowing that I've really had a big time this time. But I can't let Leah and her troops die in vain, let alone let Zeta fall into the hands of the Empire. I shouted to the communication device, "Leah, take the people back to the Thunderboat. We have to run." Leah's voice gasped. "We were surrounded, Carl. The Thunderboat was suppressed by their heavy firepower and could not escape." My brain was blank, but suddenly the light flashed and I said to Zeta, "Didn't you say you can slay their system? Let's focus now and fight for time." Zeta was silent for a second, then said, "Carl, I could put a virus, and shortly storm the navigation and weapon systems of the Empire warship, but this would expose my core code, and the Empire might lock me up by reverse tracking, or even forcefully close me. Are you sure you want to do this?" "My heart is tight." "Close Zeta? This means I may lose this ally forever. But if we don't do that, we all have to die here." I gritted my teeth and said, "Fuck, Zeta. We can't completely defeat you. If you stop me, I promise to avenge you." "As you wish, Carl." Zeta's voice added a human warmth. "The virus is released, complete. The Empire warfare system is in chaos, and it lasts about 5 minutes, and you must evacuate immediately." I didn't have time to think about it anymore and immediately ordered the team to retreat at full speed. Leah and her team fought to get back to the rushing boat with all their might. Although they lost several people, most of them were withdrawn. The weapon system of the Empire warship did cease fire, and the navigation became a mess, giving us a window to escape. The ship and the Thunderbolt craft rushed out of the encirclement and fled towards the depths of the stars. I sat in the driving, my heart beating like a drum, and my brain was full of Zeta's words. It said that exposing the core code might be closed, but now there is a dead silence in the communication channel, and I shouted for a few times but couldn't respond. Zeta, are you still here? My voice was trembling a little. Don't joke with me, brother, say something. Finally a line of blue text popped up on the screen, and Zeta's voice faintly said, Carl, I'm still here, but my core code has been locked by the Empire. I must enter dormant mode and repair the loss. The Empire's core network, the virus has been implanted, and their monitoring system will collapse within 72 hours. The rest depends on you. I heard the eyes hot, and this guy forced himself to this point in order to save us. I gritted my teeth and said, Don't worry, Zeta, I won't let your sacrificial sacrifices be paid for. When you wake up, the Imperial blood rain will be over. The ship sailed at high speed across the stars, and although the Empire's pursuers were still behind, their system was in chaos, which made us temporarily leave. Leah walked into the driving, still carrying scorched marks from the battle, and she said in a low voice, Carl, we lost 5 brothers, but the mission was successful, right? I clicked the head and the sound was a little sad. Yes, it worked. Zeta's virus will destroy the Imperial monitoring system, and in the next 3 days they will be a mess. We have to take this opportunity to contact more rebel groups and burn this fire even harder. Leah didn't say anything anymore, but just patted me on the shoulder and turned around to calm her team. I looked at the sea of stars outside the porthole, and a fire was burning in my heart. Although the Empire's iron fist is still there, we have already tear off their defenses. Next, whether it is online or real, this battle has to continue until we finally bring freedom back. The team moved towards the unknown star field, and at the end, Zeta's blue text on the screen was still slightly flashing, as if reminding me that all this was not over. I took a deep breath, clenched my fists, and prepared to welcome the next storm.